Welcome to the Clean Comedy Podcast, featuring James Creviston and Luke LaCoy. Yeah, we're about to get clean up in here, so clean your mouth out with a bar of soap and get ready for the Clean Comedy Podcast.
Hey everybody, this is James, and welcome to the Clean Comedy Podcast. Before we jump into it, I've got a sponsor for you. Our sponsor today is historyradio.org. Historyradio.org is a small blog and net radio which tries to promote knowledge of literary classics and history. It's free of ads and free for everyone. Listen to classic radio drama, lectures, and documentaries at historyradio.org. Welcome to the Clean Comedy Podcast, and today we have a great guest, a guy who's been a friend of mine since I started comedy, helped me all along the way, and now pretty much runs Flappers as far as I know. I think he runs everything there. I think he's in charge of like all of it. So if you want to get booked, you want to go out there, he's shaking his head no. I'm just kidding. But he does so much and helps so many comedians. He lifts them up and really guides them, gives them a way to kind of move forward. And he's been so good at mentoring me and mentoring a ton of other comedians I know. Please give it up for the very funny, the very cool, the very talented Mr. Paul Douglas Moomjean.
Well, thank you. I'm just so
kidding.
everyone's aware, I am only the site director for Flappers University, which is the educational department. I'm in charge of scheduling and orchestrating and making sure that the classes have it.
I was just kidding with them. I'm so sorry, everybody. So don't email with Paul.
That, listen, you say that, and I got people who are like, I don't want to deal with the bookers and the marketers. Paul, just book me. I'm like, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, no, it doesn't work like that.
You know, it's kind of like when you work at McDonald's. In high school, I had a friend who worked at McDonald's, and we just assumed we would just get free burgers for the rest of our lives. And he's like, no, I'll get fired. Like if I just decided to like add you two to Friday night show at Flappers, the booker would be very angry. And not because it's you, it's just because, you know, they have a show they're doing.
Yeah.
But this is my number one DM. Like I now know what it's like to be a pretty girl. I get so many DMs from comics just going, how do I get book me? Like, no. How are you two doing? I haven't seen you guys forever.
I know. So guys, do not message Paul about getting booked. I was just kidding about that. But if you do want to get better at comedy, definitely message him and definitely get him to help you out with that. But don't message him to get bookings. I'm doing good. Luke, are you doing good?
I'm doing good.
Yeah,
everyone's doing good. We're all great.
I think, Paul, I think you're the only one of us that has a legitimate 9-to-5 job or real day job.
Probably, and to be perfectly honest, if someone would have told me that I would still have a job, like, so here's what happened. Okay, January, we had a great month. I worked very hard. I reached out to a lot of comics, a lot of people who had been at shows. We emailed them, and we signed up a bunch of people. And then March hit, and now we had an equal amount of numbers, but we had to convert the entire school to a Zoom room in a day. Okay? Like, remember on March 13th, they're like, you can't do stuff unless there's like only this many people. By March 16th, it was like, no one's allowed to look at each other in the eye.
It's so true.
So this is hysterical. This is my favorite story of the whole pandemic. So we have about 75 people that have signed up for writing classes, stand-up classes. The very first class in Zoom is my level 1 class for stand-up. And we told them that you can come into the classroom, we will socially distance you, or you can use the Zoom room, either one. There were 5 girls, there were 5 boys, men and women, but you know what I mean. The 5 dudes show up. The 5 women are all on Zoom. So when the booker opens the door, he sees 6 dudes watching 5 girls on the cam, and it looked like the most R-rated version of iCarly in the history of time. Okay, like it was terrible. Like I realized. So then I looked at all of them and I said, no one's coming back. We're Zooming the whole thing. And I just decided to make that the rule. And since then, we started at 68, 70. We're up to 91 students right now in the school. So we're doing what we're finding is that we're also getting a lot of people from the East Coast. We're getting people from as far away. We're in Burbank. We have people as far away as Ventura. Okay. Like there's people who would never come to us because Ventura is an hour and a half trip. Like James, you've lived in the Ventura area before. You know what it's like. And so we're killing it only because people are like, I'm bored and I don't want to drive, and we've killed two birds with one stone.
Yeah.
Right. So it's been super fun. But that first day when it was the 6 dudes and I just staring at the 4 girls and the girls, like, by the way, I'll just do this myself. Out of the 5 girls, 3 of them were like this. They had the picture thing up in head. Like we didn't even know if it was them or so yeah.
So here's my question. With all this stuff, how I talked to another booker, Al Martin, who runs the Broadway Comedy Club and a couple other clubs in New York, and he said this is seriously affecting comedy. How is it affecting? How do you think it's going to affect comedy in the future, and how is it affecting comedy right now?
Two major things.
Okay.
The first is Los Angeles, New York, the places that have been shut down the hardest, right? Because I just did a podcast with somebody who's still performing in South Dakota. Okay, it's limited, but listen, what is it? Tennessee still has shows. Texas still has shows, right? So it's really the bigger markets. The first thing is that when we come back, I don't think we're going to have the ability to allow up-and-comers to get stage time. What we're going to have is a bunch of hungry, heavyweight comedians who haven't been on a stage, who are going to probably do 50% door deals to keep the place open and take a little money themselves. So I don't want to name names, but I just can't imagine we're going to see a lot of like amateur nights because A, the comedians who are the greats right now, our current stable of great comics, they're going to want to be on the stage more than they've ever been. And the other thing is that I don't know, like we'll just use an example. I think Jerry Seinfeld goes to a comedy club, he would get the maximum amount of people they're allowed to have. I'm pretty sure if the 3 of us were to have a show and we called our friends, they'd be like, during COVID, why would I go out?
Yeah.
Right? So the 10 to 15, 20 people over the years that we can get to come and support us, and maybe we start to build some fans through the podcast and the Instagrams and all the things that we're doing, that's going to be, no one's risking their lives to hear us do comedy. Right. But people might be willing to get sick to just be able to do this to Jerry Seinfeld and be like, I think I could touch him. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, and this is from my perspective as an instructor, we have an entire generation of comedians who started in Zoom. We have a lot of comedians who have now quit comedy, flat out. Like they're just done. They're not doing stand-up. They're probably not going to go back. They don't want this to be taken away from them again. This is like a breakup. Here's the thing that's going to happen to the Zoom comics. They're going to be great writers. They love stand-up. I know this because I've seen them. But they have yet to experience that wonderful feeling of an audience member about 2.5 minutes into your set doing this. Right? There's a moment in a comedy show where you realize someone has done the math in their head. $15 an hour for Brittany the babysitter. They decided to order the calamari as an appetizer. They're getting the 2 chicken steak dinners, right? They both ordered 2 Moscow mules and a margarita, and this is a $270 night, right? And they haven't experienced that yet. Because in a Zoom, have you guys done Zoom comedy shows?
Yeah, we did a couple.
I've done a couple. So you notice the sound of 4 people laughing is like the same as like 50 people laughing, right? Because Zoom can only capture so much sound.
Right.
So here's the best part. The person does the comedy bit. They're like, and that's why the chicken crossed the road. And you hear 3 laughs and you go, and then you move on. But if I'm at Flappers and only 3 people laugh, right? I can't make the argument, well, the rest of the people were on mute, right? This doesn't work. So I think that's what the first thing is. The first thing is the young ones are going to do more open mics. They're going to have to create their own pathways, I think. They're going to have to utilize TikTok and Instagram, and they're going to have to, like, I know comics who really never brought out a single soul to a comedy show, and they have 100,000 TikTok followers. So how did that happen? I don't know. I've had a total of 200 likes on my TikTok, but I'm still getting more views than I did on Instagram. So, but then the next thing is that you're going to have a lot of comedians who I think the first time they step on stage and they get that kind of cold response from the crowd that they're not used to, they're going to have to make a choice. And I think some will quit and some will go, okay, no, I know I'm good at this. For 6-8 months, for a year, I did well. I wrote good jokes. So that's the future, I think, for those highly populated areas.
And what do you think is going to happen to like the middle of the road comics? So the guys like us who've done well, we can hold a room, but we're not big names yet. What do you think is going to happen with that group?
It's possible that could become, depending on your connections, I think more feature work, more opening work. Like, so for instance, there's going to be a lot of headliners who are going to be like, I want to do 45 minutes, but I'm going to bring my people with me because I don't want to be doing shows with strangers who may or may not, I don't trust sick-wise. I could see that happen. I think if you don't have a connection to a club, it's going to be more difficult. And I know that that's it's a hard thing to say, and it can be discouraging, but that doesn't mean you can't find an opportunity. So for instance, there are comedy clubs that are doing Zoom shows. I would say to any young comedian who wants to get in with a club that can bring them on stage as soon as it's safe, ask them, call them up. How can I intern? How can I work with you? Do you have a job for me? Can I help you with your social media? Can I do something so that you create a connection? And then when we do reopen, it'll be really hard for them to say, no, you can't do 5-10 minutes and open up for the act that's, kind of saving the club now. Yeah,
that's good. And that's the thing is I think this is the time where I do know a lot of comedians who haven't been writing, who haven't done anything, who've kind of just sat around and done nothing. So this is the sifting of the comedy world right now.
But I would argue they probably never did.
Maybe that could be very true.
I would argue that a lot of comics, when they took the stage from them, they wrote from the stage. Right? So they would get up there and be like, all right, well, what happened today and how do I feel about it? And then they went through it. And then it turned into a bit. But the second they didn't have the opportunity to write from the stage, they don't have the discipline to write on a piece of paper or type it up. So for me, if anyone wants to know the secret to this, try to do 3, 4, 5 jokes a day on Facebook, 3, 4, 5 jokes on Twitter, and then try to maybe create, like what I've been doing as a writing exercise is using memes. And I've ended up developing some punchlines that I would have written myself. They're actually getting more likes because people don't see it as, how often does a comedian put a picture of themselves with a comedy quote?
Yeah.
Right?
All the time.
And you don't know, and here's the thing, you don't know if what they're saying is comedy or some type of Christian Bible verse message, right? You don't know, so you just keep scrolling. But then you see the funny meme picture, and you're like, oh, this is cool. That's funny. And then you start generating, okay, if I can turn that punchline into part of my act, so using the meme format, Twitter and Facebook. And by the way, here's the best rule for me. I make sure every joke I write has to fit into the blue box or whatever the message box is, right? So this way I'm writing real jokes. I'm not just ranting, right? That's for blogging and stuff. So that's what I've been doing. I'm writing 10 jokes a day easily. I'm getting instant feedback.
That's good. That's smart.
So when I'm hosting a show for Flappers or I'm on a show for my friend's Zoom show, I go through my Facebook 10 minutes before the thing and I go, here's the 5-10 jokes I want to start with, and then maybe I'll do some writing on the fly, right? The bit that I've been working on right now that's been fun is Gavin Newsom is like California's stepdad, right? And he's yelling at the different cities to behave themselves. Everyone's got their own problems, right? Like, we cannot open up until San Diego, get out of the water. Okay? What are you doing, Bakersfield? Take that out of your mouth. So, so that I wrote that, but I started with that joke of him being the stepdad, and then in the Zoom show, I started to just go, what are the states? And I think the last one I wrote was like, Northern California, Humboldt in particular, take that pot out of your mouth. I don't care that it's legal. Okay, so it's just doing that, and that's what I've been telling my students, And here's the thing: people don't like writing on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter because they're afraid they're not going to get a lot of likes, or they're afraid. How else are you going to find out if anyone likes it?
That's true. That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
So what do you think? What do you think besides those things and writing? Obviously, writing is a big one. Do you think there's also going to be comedy clubs are going to still do Zoom shows and live shows? Do you think they're going to try to incorporate both those things to stay alive?
I think so. Here's what I do know. From a classes standpoint, from a workshop standpoint, we will not go away from the virtual end. We have too many people. Like let's say 30 people show up on our Sunday workshop for a joke structure, right? If we were open, we would have maybe an in-person one, but we would then still be able to have 30 other people take the virtual one. As for stand-up, I believe that a lot of open mics are going to go Zoom. And like, for instance, like you guys have been, you were doing podcasting. Really, how long have you guys been doing the clean?
What episode are we on? Like 188, so 188 weeks or something like that?
Right.
Yeah.
Something
so
like that.
Like 4 years maybe, right?
Yeah, we've been doing it forever.
So you've been right. And well, I remember being on the show years ago.
Yeah.
And so, but here's my point is that you guys kind of did it just as it was like the popular thing to do, but you weren't part of the oversaturation thing. And so you've built an audience, you have numbers, you're doing great. Whereas other people now have 7 listeners because they went into the oversaturation part, right? Here's what I think is going to happen. We have Zoom comedians who will probably always do Zoom. They got in at the right time because how many comics do you know are just afraid of Zoom, like headliners? They're afraid of it. They just are. They'll tell you. They're like, I don't know what to do in a Zoom room. Whereas the ones who started in it, they will maintain it. So I'm making the prediction that we will have just like the way we have musical comedy, character comedy, we're going to have Zoom comedy. Because in a Zoom room, like I can go from here to, like I could do this and then I could go to, oh, look everyone, I'm at the beach. And now I'm a hobbit. And back to this, right? So I can do all of that I couldn't do on the regular stage. So it's a different skill level.
I never thought about that. That's interesting.
By the way, Luke hasn't talked in 15 minutes.
I know. That's the norm. Luke?
I'm just cooling down. I mean, once you get me started, I'll take over.
Do it.
So,
I just, I was terrified you got COVID and lost your voice.
No. I was gonna say Drew Lynch is doing some interesting virtual shows, like with his how he has like the screens of all the audience members, and then it's like real interaction. I mean, that's the closest thing that I've seen so far with like true interaction with audiences on Zoom, and that's a really cool setup that he has. So
yeah, I've seen a couple people with similar setups. There's some online comedy like clubs, they're virtual, and they've developed these kind of like Ready Player One worlds, which isn't this kind of funny that like we kind of are in Ready Player One now. It's not cool at all, and it's just a Zoom room, but we're all in this like weird virtual comedy. People are doing virtual dates. People are doing virtual everything. And we're plugging in like, if all of us had, like, you're both married, right? Both. That's what I thought. So like at that, and then I bring a girl, we can literally have a date night. Right? Like we could legitimately, and here's the best part, you can just call into the other room and have your women come and join. And obviously I'd have to go to the corner to find someone, but that's a different story. And then the Clean Comedy Podcast. But then here's the thing is that once it becomes normal.
Yeah.
And then you have to do the dreaded thing one day of going out in person where you feel people's energy, and that changes how people interact with each other.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what I think the biggest thing is going to be is the comedians who started on Zoom like you said, going to the stage and feeling that difference is going to either excite them or terrify them. And either they're going to all drop out and go back to Zoom, or they're going to push forward.
Or quit.
Or quit. Yeah. Now for us, that's how we understood comedy. So I understand why comedians would be fearful of Zoom, because it's a different experience. You're not experiencing this before, and now you have to do it. I don't love Zoom rooms that much. I understand them and I get how it works, but they're not. I don't like you said, where you could, if everyone laughs, it only allows like 2 or 3 people through. It doesn't allow it all. So then that's kind of off-putting a little bit. And then also not being able to see everybody is kind of weird as well too. Those are the 2 things that I struggle with, but I don't mind them. I set up my microphone stand and all my stuff like I'm doing a normal show. So I am standing. I don't sit. I don't do any of that stuff. I stand up, take the mic out of the mic stand, do all the same stuff I do on stage, and I just have a virtual background, and I'm here.
Right. And you know what? Here's the best part. There's no right or wrong way to do it.
Right.
I would argue the only wrong way is if you're completely out of frame.
Yes.
And I have seen people where, like, legitimately, they're just like this the whole time. and they look like it's almost like they're at the aquarium. Like, is that a fish? And so that's a problem. And as an instructor, it's so funny because I'll say, like, hey, listen, everything's great. What? Let's get ourselves in frame. And somehow I just told them their religion is false and that their mother adopted them. And you're like, what are you talking to me? And so that's been, for me, the hardest part. Like, they don't care if I like their jokes or not. They get mad when I tell them, be in frame.
Well, you also come from a film background too. So for you, being in frame is a big deal. Same with me. I frame up myself every time I do this show and make sure I'm right at the center of everything. So that makes sense. What is the plan? I guess I can't really ask flappers, but like, if you ran a comedy club, if you did it by yourself, what would be your plan for moving forward ahead of this? Because what I hated was that we opened up in California, then we closed again. And now they're like, well, we don't know when we're going to open up again. So do you think, what would be your plan moving forward? Or would you like to see moving forward if a club?
Well, I think what we've learned is no one knows what they're doing.
That's true.
Okay. So, and we're making it up as we go, as a global pandemic would go. I mean, when I see people on the right or the left trashing the other side, I go, really? You have all the answers? Because here's the argument I would make just in general, if I'm a business person.
Yeah.
Let's say 3 people died after going to my business because of COVID. That's going to come out. So now I have to ask the question, is my restaurant, is my comedy club, are people going to associate it with death? Now that could ruin the brand forever, right? It's kind of like people get murdered in a house. That house value drops how much? But it was just in, like, whatever the length of the person is, that's the only part of the room that was tarnished. And you can clean blood because, like, kids bleed all the time from their nose. You just scrub it out. Like, it wasn't like the carpet can't be replaced. Like, no, someone died in there. We're no longer going to be able to sell this house for $1 million. The same thing goes to the venue, right? Okay. So that's the first thing, which means, here's the other thing too, when I thought about it. Imagine if we never knew what COVID was. What if just people started dying? Okay. Like, we didn't know it was COVID. We didn't know how people were dying. Just all of a sudden, 653,000 people across the globe died.
Just dropped.
We would think one of 2 things. We'd either go, A, somehow this is like the Jehovah Witness rapture, because the numbers are big enough to be like, whoa, and small enough to think this is the elite. Okay? That's possible. People would think. The second thing is people would be like, something is wrong, but we don't know what to do. And we would, like, really be begging our politicians to find out, right? But here's the thing. We know what it is. Once we gave it a name, people were like, well, now I'm not afraid of it. So, right, because once you name something, you limit it.
Yeah.
Right? James Creviston gets limited to whatever you can Google.
Right.
Right? But if I told you, if I said, there's this guy, he has podcasts and comedy shows, and he's married and he's got children. You'd be like, what doesn't he do? And then I say, it's James Creviston. They go, oh, I knew a guy named James. So when we named it, we limited our fear of it, because Mr. Rogers had a great expression: if it is mentionable, it is manageable. So we call it COVID-19. You say, like, I have the flu, I have COVID-19, I have AIDS, I have whatever, and we go, oh, we can find a way to deal with it, right? So quarantine yourself. That's what we've decided. The problem is that there's a lot of people who are sick, they don't know. So as a business owner, to be perfectly honest, I don't know if I would feel comfortable opening my place up until I knew that the only way people were going to die, ironically, is if someone walked in there and killed them.
Right.
That would be a more ideal situation.
I don't know if ideal, but okay. But I get what you're saying.
No, but like you look at like the Comedy Store. People shot dead in front of the Comedy Store. People went back the next night.
Yeah.
But if they had 2 COVID deaths, nobody would be there for 6 months. That's
true. So the biggest thing that I think is changing in comedy is that nobody knows what's changing in comedy, and that's the truth. Is the headliners are fearful of Zoom. Nobody wants to go to the club. When do you think comedy will come back in the form that we knew before? Maybe not in the exact form that we knew before, but in the club space form that we knew before. Like if you had to put look into your little magic ball and say, this is what I think. When do you see that returning to quote unquote normal? Not real normal, but.
Right. When does it go back to a shape in which it used to be?
Right. A similar shape. Agreed.
Well, I think there's a complexity to that, which is we've also been doing without movies, and yet we've been doing nothing but watching movies, right? So we somehow, like, I don't know if you heard, Mulan is just giving up on the theater.
Yeah, that's what I read that today, but they're going to charge like $30 or something, right?
Right, but you already have to pay $9 a month with Disney Plus. Like it's very silly what they're doing there. But
yeah.
At the same time, they've conceded we aren't going to the theater anytime soon. And if we are, we don't have enough people who are going to make it work. So let's just say every comedy club has worked out something with their landlord, or they've worked out something with their staff, and then they reopen and business is not great. Like, it might be for the first 3-4 weeks. I lived in Simi Valley, California. You want to know what the biggest thing ever was? When a new frozen yogurt place opened up. There was the line out the door. And now all there is now we're down to like 2 frozen yogurt places. At one point there was 50 of them, right? My point is that I could see the first 6 weeks of comedy just killer. People showing up, people feeling good. But that'll go back to normal. And by then I think people will be, I don't know, how do I put this politely? I don't know if society is going to require stand-up comedy in its old form. Because the market, people determine the value of things. So unfortunately, you look at, like, there is people in 1920 who made a lot of money selling horses to police officers. There was horse people, right? And then one day, Henry Ford said, if we put wheels on metal, and then by 30 something, police cars were invented. So all of a sudden, what happened to all those farmers? What happened to all those horse breeders? They went out of business. Like, yeah, they could have been like, because that was their pandemic, right? So then you have to ask yourself the question, will we move forward in the same way? Probably not. Zoom, virtual, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube viral, Twitter comments, there's still going to be comedy. It just may never be the way it was. Just like there's still horses. Like, people still ride horses. There's still a few places, like in New York, you see the guy on the horse, and like there's still horse, and they're still involved in law enforcement and travel, but they're not the main anymore. And that could be the stand-up comedy world.
That's terrifying. I hate that idea because I love the energy of a club. So for me, that's like, ugh, I don't want that. But then also, like I said, we're in the middle. We're these middle guys who aren't new and have been doing comedy for enough years to have material and stuff. But we're not on TV. We're not headliners where everyone knows who we are. So we're stuck in the middle. And I feel like that's the middle class of like, we're like the middle class of America. Like we're slowly going to get squeezed out. We're either going to be open micers forever until we get that one break and then we can pop over, or we're just going to disappear.
Well, yeah, here's the other thing too, is that there's a lot of national headliners that nobody knows. So there's a ton of people who are making $150,000 a year doing cruise ships, corporate gigs, and clubs.
But those aren't gonna happen either, because right, if the clubs won't happen, then you're not gonna go on a cruise ship.
Right. So I was at the Ventura Pier the other day. I was with a woman.
Congrats.
And don't want to brag or nothing, but
brag.
don't want to brag or nothing. But I looked out at the little boats and I thought to myself, I bet you if I found wealthy enough people and I trusted them and they had their temperature checked and stuff, I bet you I can get 8 people to pay $100 each to go on that boat, and I would just cover the costs of the boat, and then they could pay me, and then I could put on a comedy show for them. So I think what's really going to happen is the grinders will find a way to keep grinding, the hustlers will find a way to hustle, and the people who are just like, no, I needed the club to book me to be a comedian. No, I never needed a club ever, right? 6 months in, I was running a smoothie shop thing. You did that, didn't you, Jane?
Yeah. I loved it. I loved it. Yeah.
So and then, look, I've made more money in comedy running in the back room of a Mimi's Cafe than I ever made in a club. So the hustlers will find a way. Like right now I'm working with Flappers and I'm doing all this great stuff for the school. We're having a lot of fun, but there's going to come a point where it's all going to settle a little bit. And then I'm going to be able to not have to navigate every moment of the school. And I'm going to be like, I'm going to go do this thing. So, I may start my own Zoom show one day, right? Maybe after the festival, we have the big festival right now. But after that, once we figure out what we're going to do and I don't have to worry as much, maybe every night at 7, I'll run my own thing and we'll have donations and maybe, I'm smart. I know how to make money if I need to.
Right.
I look back at my life and I always think to myself, how did you get through that? Oh, that's right. You were smart enough not to buy something stupid when you didn't have money. And you were smart enough to figure out how to get an extra $400 that month by taking on an odd job or doing something. Yeah. So, that's probably the plan, is to just hustle my way through. In fact, I teach a class called Getting Booked on the Road that I'll be doing for the festival, in which my whole thing is, if you're relying on comedy clubs to book you, then really what you're saying is, I'm not a comedian unless other bookers validate me. And that's not fair to you, because you're a comedian because you get up there. And you can go anywhere. And there's plenty of comics who don't do the big venues, but they're at every bar in the country killing it and building Instagram fans and Twitter followers.
Yep.
They're doing it, they're grinding it out, and they're going to benefit from it one day.
And that's exactly right. And you guys can thank Paul for helping me learn how to hustle, because I was running 2 different shows too, doing the same thing, all because Paul taught me the things. So if you ever pick up my book, How to Produce Comedy Shows for Fun and Profit, probably 70% of that I learned from Paul alone, just from him. And then the other stuff I learned by accident or from other people as they kind of taught me along the way. So if you can take his class, is it like, can they just buy the class outright? Can they just take that one class, or do they have to buy a ticket or what?
So if they go to flappersuniversity.com, they'll see all our one-day workshops.
Okay.
And we have stuff going from August 9th to August 22nd, but then we always have ongoing after that. But for the festival, we have so many workshops. I decided to take on about 5 of them.
Wow.
Just so that, it's easier if but here's what I've learned about things. Every person I've ever hired in the last year to work for us has been wonderful. At the same time, there's always a sense of they may not show up. And I have to, you know what I mean? Because even though they always do, there's my fear is they won't, because I taught education for years. You know how many times I was in my free period and the school principal's assistant would call me and say, this Ruben never showed up. You go sub her class? So I just decided for the festival, I did not want to have to coordinate 18 different instructors. It's just way easier if I just give myself basically, 1/4 or, 1/3 of the gigs. That way I know where I'll be.
Yeah.
And if I fail, at least A, I'm the only one who knows. But then I can give the reason why. I don't want to deal, with 18 workshops, 18 different instructors. God bless them, but they're still comedians, and so they're still going to have questions. And I actually had to teach people how to use Zoom. I don't know if you guys have ever had that pleasure.
Not yet, no.
People how to use Zoom, and they just like teaching them how to do a virtual background, and you're like, all right, go to stop video, and then they would just stop it. I'm like, no, go there, and then you're like, okay, now click the arrow, and then they would be like, what arrow? The pointer, the up, the whatever. Oh, you mean the upside down V? Yes, the upside down V. So,
hey man, when are we going to get booked to teach podcasting or something? Like, come on, we've done this 188 times.
No.
I'm just kidding.
No. This is something. What I want to do is I want to get you on our live stream podcast to talk a little bit what your guys' experience was. But what I was thinking is that is something we could do down the line. We have a podcast guy who's been with us for like 4 years, but I keep telling all of our instructors, if I bring in new people, then the same people who took you may take James's class, because it'll be different information.
Yeah.
Right. So we have a guy named Steve Troutman who's just wonderful. I think you took his writing class. Did you? I don't know.
The name sounds familiar. I don't know.
So Steve Troutman was the podcaster for the WGA.
Oh, wow.
So it's just great. He has connections. It's great. But we also need people who organically just decided to buy a bunch of equipment and go, well, let's see what happens. No, really, right? Because that's kind of, on some level, that's your story, right?
Yeah, it's exactly what we did. Our first podcast, I don't even think it's out anymore, but our first podcast was in a noisy coffee shop because we didn't know any better. Thought we could talk, and the background noise killed everything. So we had to redo that podcast. But we learned.
Oh, how many of us, did you guys ever make short films in high school for like projects and stuff?
Yeah, I made some.
Right? That's your film school if you never get to go, right?
Yeah.
I'll never forget, in my senior year, we did this great Western like reenactment for our history class. And we decided to do this. We had a giant cage in my garage that my stepdad used as kind of a little workroom. And he needed to block it off so the dogs never went in, right? So he builds this big, beautiful cage. So we're going to do a jail scene. And I suggested, let's light the whole thing with candles. So we get like 25 candles, from the dollar store. And we light them all up, all right? And we're filming, we're looking at it, it looks gorgeous. Then we filmed it. Then we watched the film. Would you like to know something? Nothing came out.
Yep.
All we saw was this fuzzy yellow and people yelling. Like it made, in fact, there was like major plot points, like someone died and you never saw it. So like, but you learn, right? That's how you learn. And then the next time we did it, what we did was we put on one little light in the back, which lit up and then we were able to capture the backlight. And then all of a sudden it looked respectable for a high school project, but that's how you learn. You grab your equipment. That sounds bad. You move forward. You just figure it out.
That's awesome.
So I would like to, that's something that you guys would be able to work on. Then maybe our other instructors give a different side where they started with the WGA. They have the resources and the money. I'd love to see you guys come in and also do something on, just how to do it. So yeah, that's something to definitely talk about.
Yeah, let us know. All right. Well, thank you, Paul, so much for being here. Where can people find you? Where can they find more about you? Where can they find about the classes that you teach?
Usually in Luke's basement. He let me out for this. Luke, he said no words. This is the greatest podcast. It always is for that reason. The Moom Abides on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok, and if you just whatever. And then if they are interested in any type of classes, and we have everything from writing for late night, writing sitcoms, writing sketch. Right now I'm taking the sketch class. It's with SNL Emmy winner Hugh Fink. Like we got a guy who created, he actually developed the whole celebrities doing commercials for SNL. Like, it's like, he's the first one who did that. And then he kind of, Lauren Michaels was like, let's just keep doing that. So when celebrities came in, when they didn't know what to do with them, they were like, what if you were doing a Subway commercial? And I'm like, all right. So we have that. We have stand-up classes. I teach the level 1s and the level 2s so that we can get a good foundation. And then we also have a lot of professional comedians, people who are all over, international. We have some wonderful instructors teaching levels 3 and 4. So We also here's something that's really fun. We have a late night showcase set where Dana Eagle teaches you how to take your best 5 and get it ready for when Conan and Colbert and all those are happening. And so that's been a really successful course as well. So we have lots of things. Just you can find me, and if you find me on social media, ask me about it. If not, go to flappersuniversity.com.
Awesome. Thank you. Luke, where can everyone find you at?
In my basement. alone in my basement. Yeah, Luke LaCoy on everything.
All right. And you can find me, jamesdcreviston.com. Check out comedypreneur.com or go and look on YouTube. Don't forget to look on YouTube and figure out what this background is. And then go ahead and put it in the comments. We'll shout you out on another episode. So keep it going. Thank you guys so much for listening. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Yeah, we're about to get clean up in here. So clean your mouth out with a bar of soap and get ready for the